Should be on. Hey everybody, this is Engaging Men Q&A. We're having Q&A with Jay. This is our Q&A for the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. I'm Jay Von Howard, pronouns he, him, his. I'm the Engaging Men Coordinator. This Q&A was where I spent about 15 to 30 minutes answering technical assistance questions around engaging men and working with male survivors. So thank you for joining me today. I'm going to give it a couple minutes for folks to sort of come in and join us. As that is happening, I will also lay down some few ground rules just to let everyone know this is a safe space. This live is for folks who are practitioners, for men who are survivors. This space is for anyone who's interested in learning more about engaging men and working with male survivors. Hey, Jay. Well, I guess I'm Hey, Jay. Hey, how you doing? And so that's what we're doing today. That's what we're always doing. This is a safe space. Everyone's welcome to interact with me, ask any questions that you have in the comment section. And thank you for joining me this afternoon. So like I said, we are going through our questions. So I actually only have one question officially today. And then I thought that maybe we would have a little bit of conversation, and I will share a few of my thoughts about this being June, June being Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and also Pride Month, as well as PTSD Awareness Month. So all of these things intersect really very well when we're talking about engaging men and working with men. Since we only have the one question, I figured maybe we'll have a little bit of a conversation, and I can share my thoughts about what's been going on this month. But the first question that I do have is, what are successful engaging men initiatives you have seen or worked with? Really like this question. For one, as Engaging Men Coordinator, most of my role is doing a lot of outreach, doing a lot of connecting with other partners, doing a lot of connections with programs, providing trainings, serving on committees around having a lot of this conversation about who are the folks that we can lean on to help build this movement up. As we know that when we're having conversations about sexual violence, when we're having conversations about survivorship, men do not come up in that conversation, and if they do come up in the conversation, they come up in the conversation in positioned or postured as perpetrators. Unfortunately, a lot of that work that we do around the country, well, I wouldn't say unfortunately, very good that we're doing this work, but we're talking about male survivorship. We're talking about serving men as survivors. There are very few and far between for organizations or programs that really focus on serving men as victims of violence, and especially as victims of sexual violence. So the first organizations that really come to mind for just engaging men and doing engaging men programming and initiatives that I really rely on and I work with a lot, or I look at their work and try to replicate or try to bring some of the things that they do to Ohio. The first one being A Call to Men. A Call to Men, if you're not familiar with them, they're a national organization that focuses on training boys and men around ending violence against women and girls. They have a lot of curriculums. They focus on working with athletics and sports a lot. So they have really strong curriculums that are based on engaging men around having conversations with their platform, with other men in athletics, having conversations with youth around aggression, social learning behaviors, having conversations about masculinity, about what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a man, what is expected, why is it expected. They have a lot of conversations about the man box as well and how oppressive it can be. So that'd be the first organization I would definitely recommend that I work with or have seen doing engaging men initiatives. Men Can Stop Rape is a very good organization as well. They have lots of trainings that you can look at. They have curriculums as well, resources. You can get speakers. They have clubs where they engage women as well as boys and men, specifically around things for ending violence against women and girls. Men as Peacemakers, talking with men, organizing men about things being less around aggression and power and control, and more about embracing nurturance, cooperation, community, being calm and having harmony with yourself and with others. My Brother's Keeper, Organizations like that that are focused on mentorship are very, very important. Those are really good initiatives to look into and to partner with when we're talking about working with men and boys. Mentorship is very good for trajectory if we're talking about boys and adolescents and young men who have mentors or are in environments where men also have mentors, or they're in environments where men are mentoring, or have positive role models or positive mentors in their lives, are more likely to be more emotionally intelligent when they're older. They're more likely to have those positive models on how to express themselves, how to be in community, how to be in relationships, how to connect with other people. So mentorship programs are very important, especially if we're talking about Black men, Latinx men, and other men of color. There are studies that show, and there's not enough studies that show a lot of this work, especially working with boys and men of color. But for the ones that do exist and the ones that have been produced and have been replicated, mentorship is a very good starting point for connecting with boys and men of color to help them produce masculinity, self-concepts, understandings of relationships that are more positive, especially within this larger institution and system of white supremacy. Having those mentors, having positive male role models for young men is very important, and leads to that decrease of violence over time for themselves, and more likely they have more positive pro-social behaviors and attitudes. And then I have another one listed, a couple more I listed just so I don't forget. The Men's Story Project and the Black Emotional Mental Health Collective are two additional organizations I will also add for engagement initiatives that I've worked with and seen that are really good for working with the community, working with men, having resources that are available already. So those would be the things that I would add. I did see a couple questions come in. Let me scroll back up. We have one from the Ohio Men's Action Network. Welcome. Good to see you all. And of course, like Ohio Men's Action Network, we're talking about places in Ohio. The Ohio Men's Action Network is a wonderful resource. If you want to get with folks and have conversations about manhood and masculinity, they focus on organizing young men and men around ending violence against women and girls in Ohio. Specifically, having questions, taking pledges, organizing with boys, and we have the Courageous Conversations where we get folks together to have courageous conversations about lots of different topics related to men and masculinity. So I wanted to give that shout out there. So the question is, in working with fathers, I have placed the idea of how do we as fathers respond to questions from our kids about pride? What is a healthy way to explain this to the next generation? I see it continues to ensure we are not teaching the next generation hate. Well, thank you for that question, especially, leading into the second part of this, where we're talking a little bit about pride and June being Pride Month. So thank you for that. So I'm going to read it again. How do we as fathers respond to questions from our kids about pride, and what is a healthy way to explain this to the next generation? So that is a good question. So I always would start off with curiosity. I would say leading with curiosity is where you start. Looking up information yourself about things, having that knowledge or having some idea about what it is that you're wanting to have a conversation about with folks, with the youth, with young men, with other folks in your community, feeling like you are armed with some kind of knowledge, with some kind of language, can sometimes first and foremost give you that confidence that you can have that conversation, that you are able to engage with it with someone. I would then say that, I don't know, the world is all over the place. We have made a lot of progress, and we have so many more resources and so much more support and so much more space and a much more openly accepting culture, that it is a bit easier to move into those conversations because we have so much that we can sort of draw on as like examples, as role models. When we're talking about what pride means, we have that history that's more readily available. So pride is really just about, identity, freedom, autonomy, and sovereignty to exist as yourself and be yourself without oppression, without violence. It's about a celebration of how many victories that we have earned, and it's also about reminding folks of how much more we have to go, and that some of these victories that we have earned, we have to battle for again, and continue to battle. So explaining that this is about people being people and about all of us being able to feel like we can be ourselves and be safe being ourselves in the world. So I think that's a good place where it could start, to make sure that we're not teaching that hate and that we're not spreading those things. We're talking about engaging men and boys specifically around, homophobia, around heterosexism, around transphobia. It really starts with just sitting them down and having those ongoing conversations about what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a community member, does it mean to be a family member, what does it mean to be a member of a community and to be a part of something bigger than yourself. I think a lot of the conversation about man and masculinity really gets down to individualizing us, and really gets into isolating us from other people. So where that hate comes out of, it comes out of just like this social distance, this real, like, actual social distancing, this cultural distancing from others. And there's also the same distancing from self, because, folks could be gay, folks can, have anxiety, folks can be depressed, folks can fit into whatever social group or population that they might be facing toward and trying to oppress, and be a part of that community themselves. And so it's also about having that to be able to take care of yourself as well. So hopefully that answered that question. I'm going to pause in case there was any additional questions that came through, or if there was any comment. So while I'm waiting for any additional questions to come through, so I wanted to talk a little bit about Men's Mental Health Month. So June is Men's Mental Health Month. The reason why I wanted to talk about it is, one, as an Engaging Men coordinator, I'm always trying to think of different ways that we can have these conversations with men, especially around survivorship and trauma, and especially around sexual trauma. So I know I've said this a lot in my trainings, and hopefully, I brought it up in past Engaging Men Q&As. But oftentimes when we're talking about sexual violence and sexual trauma with men, men are not aware about the trauma that they have experienced. We aren't given that language. We're not given the space to have those conversations. Oftentimes men are told from a very young age, I think for myself as young as maybe like 8 or 9, that we're supposed to be sexually promiscuous, that we're supposed to be engaged with sex at all times. So we're supposed to be the best lovers. We're supposed to always be ready to go. And having that kind of mindset and thinking from such a young age, one, opens you up for not understanding what consent is, not being able to have conversations about, sexual interactions you might have with older people, or with people that maybe you're not interested in having sex with, or having any kind of sexual contact. And because we are telling boys and men that they should always be ready to go, that sometimes and many times they are very uncomfortable, that they're not truly consenting, and how that leads to mental health issues in the future. So these things are very much connected to that. But part of why I wanted to have the conversation is because when we see violence occur, because the first half of this was talking about Engaging Men initiatives that I've worked with or that we see, and most of them are organized around ending violence against women and girls, but positioned as boys and men as either perpetrators or folks who are passively just around, that they are not engaged, that they're not actively engaged, trying to get them to be more allies, to be co-conspirators. And for the most part, this is true, that men are not as engaged with the work, with trying to end violence as much as the folks that violence is enacted against are as engaged, which are mostly women and girls, but also boys and men. We often blame a lot of this violence on mental health. We blame the gun violence on mental health. We blame sexual violence on mental health. We blame physical violence on mental health. We blame racial violence on mental health. We blame poverty and economy and all the violences in the world on mental health. And then we know that all the violences that are enacted through the world are upward of 80%, 90% perpetrated by men. So for me, it is strange as Engaging Men coordinator to come to June for Men's Mental Health Month, where the whole world is saying men's mental health is the central cause and problem to many of the pressures that we are enduring, much of the violence that we are enduring. And there are very few campaigns on men's mental health this month. That even folks knowing that June is Men's Mental Health Month, it's hard to find folks. I've been asking around if folks have known and folks haven't known. There are no broad movements right now around men's mental health. Of course, many of us who are doing this work in small capacities, there's coordinated community responses, which we love seeing those around men's mental health. But overall, if we are talking about ending violence, if we're talking about anti-violence, if we're talking about engaging men, if we're talking about working with male survivors, and then we say that much of this is rooted in mental health, which it isn't, you'd think that we would have more work, more campaigns, more organizing around this topic. And so my little thing that I've been thinking about is, why is that? Why is that the case? Why is it that we are identifying these issues and these problems, but we don't have the movement space and we don't have this campaigning around it in the first place? And so what I would like to see more often, this is me speaking a bit more directly to any men who see this video, any folks who are masculine and male identified, is that part of the reason why we're not seeing as much around men's mental health is because we're not talking about our mental health as men. It is our responsibility to talk about our mental health. It is our responsibility to share our thoughts, our feelings, what is weighing on our minds, what we feel in our bodies, what's in our spirit. And we aren't given permission, or we feel like we don't have the permission to talk about mental health, to talk about stress, to talk about depression, to talk about anxiety, to talk about post-traumatic stress, to talk about trauma. So what we are needing, and what I would encourage you to do, is to share more of your story, to talk about yourself more, to open up, to be courageous, to take that risk, that folks do want to know, that folks do want to hear more about what is going on with you. I understand and I see, and like this is for everyone, but with this lack of campaigning, this lack of like this big broader movement, it's hard for folks to believe that. It's hard for folks to believe what I'm saying, that we do want to hear what you have to say. We do want you to open up. We do want you to come to our services. One of the main barriers that I run into with this work is that there is sort of like this brace for impact response when we tell men that we want to hear their thoughts and feelings, that there's this brace for impact response where it's like, well, do we really want to hear what men feel and think? We have this assumption that when we are listening to men's thoughts and feelings, and when they have their emotions or showing their emotions, one, we feel like we're not safe. And we feel like we're not safe for a couple of reasons. We feel like we're not safe because, one, we expect men to not show emotions, to not share about their thoughts and feelings. And so when men share about their thoughts and feelings, we feel like they're less than men. We feel like they're not capable of taking care of us, for providing for us, that this person, that this man that I'm with or around who's sharing so many feelings makes me uncomfortable. And then on the other end, when men share their thoughts and feelings, it can sometimes be offensive. It can be offensive, it can be violent, and they also can be uncomfortable. Because they're showing so much emotion, they are expressing emotion, and those men maybe are not thinking about it as thoughts and feelings. They're not thinking about it as, this is what's on my mind, on my body, and my spirit. They're thinking, I'm angry, this is all I know, and I'm going to express, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I want this uncomfortable feeling to change. I want to get back and reset to whatever harmony that is harmony for me. Whatever that may or feel like, whether it's really truly harmony for them or not. So that's just a little bit that's been on my mind today, been on my mind, I guess, as we were approaching men's mental health. Just thinking about like how we can change the way that we engage with men around their mental health, around just having these conversations in general, and ask ourselves, are we comfortable when men express emotions? Are we comfortable when men talk about their mental health? Are we comfortable when men talk about their emotional health, their spiritual health? And if we're not comfortable, are we willing to get uncomfortable? And if we're willing to get uncomfortable, I think that means then we're ready to actually start making some changes, and for all of us to come together collectively and really lean into what does it look like, and what could it look like to have a men's mental health month the way that we have Pride, the way that we are starting to acknowledge PTSD month, the way that we, acknowledge many other months that are going on in the year, the way that we're starting to acknowledge Juneteenth. What does it look like to really lean in, and what does that could look like to really like take care of men and to love men and not fear them so much? And what does it look like as men? And speaking again back to men and masculine identified people, what does it look like to love yourself? What does it look like to not fear men and to not fear other men, and to feel like you can just say what is on your mind and heart and get, the support and assistance that you need? Many of our services are organized and are focused, and our advocacy is focused on women and girls. And this is beyond just our movement with anti-sexual violence. This is also with healthcare systems. This is with law enforcement. This is with social services. Many of these organizations and institutions are organized to serve men. To serve girls and women. So what can it look like to open them up to serve men as well? And so, yeah, that's a little bit that's been on my mind. I just wanted to share that. If there's any other questions, I'll pause. So any additional comments can come through. We're coming to 12:22. So we have a few more minutes in the Q&A. See some comments. Yes, exactly. Yes, have some agreement. Thank you. Okay. I don't see anything else coming through. So before I go, there's a couple of announcements that I wanted to make sure that I gave. One, also in June, at the end of the month, we have our annual OASV conference. You can register at oasv.org/conference. We would love to see you. We're very excited. It's from, what's my calendar? June 28th through the end of the week. It's about a 3-4 day conference. I hope to see you there. And then also, just one last announcement, we do have resources for engaging men that I put together for Sexual Assault Awareness Month. But these can be used beyond Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Inside here, I have a list of many different resources that are books, organizations. I have a few articles as well that are available that I would encourage you to check out if you want to learn more about engaging men, working with men. I spent a lot of time making sure that they were resources that are as relevant as possible. But of course, we can always update more of our resources, update much of the work that we're doing when we're talking about engaging men and working with men. But if you're interested in any of that, feel free to send me an email or send us, drop something in the comments, and we can try to get some more of those to you. In the meantime, thank you for joining. Really appreciate your time and all your questions. I see we got a couple more people who actually joined us. So if you haven't, thank you for joining. Welcome. I was actually getting ready to wrap up and close out. But if you have any questions you wanted to ask around working with engaging men or working with male survivors, I have 5 more minutes. I can stick around and answer those. So I'm going to give another pause for just a moment. But yeah, thank you for joining. I will be back again next month, second Wednesday of July, and we'll be doing the same thing, answering questions, technical assistance questions around engaging men, working with male survivors, and maybe I'll share a little bit what's on my mind around working with men at the time like I did today. All right, well then, I will see you all. Enjoy the rest of your lunch break if you're on lunch. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you next month. Bye.